Yeah, right. All right, people. So welcome back. I saw some thumbs up, so hopefully people on the call are back already. So this second session, if you remember, is for us to now start looking at what questions arose from last week, from Tuesday. From Tuesday, the questions you have from hopefully you started engaging with some of the readings, activities. I see one or two reflections already coming in. So let's try from those videos from Jabbar that we watched, that we saw. So what questions arose, areas of clarification, or comments from those specific videos or any of the other ones you've actually had time to go through. So the floor is open. People gone through, yeah, we went through it together. So were there any areas from the video from Jabbar that you want us to, you have a question about? What did you think about his views? Do you agree with his views? Cedric already hinted at it when he was talking about the comment he made around the fracturing of within the deaf community, if I can put it that way. And he was highlighting some of the issues or what he felt could be an issue. I know one of the activities there was if Jabbar should be taken to a special school or mainstream school. So there's so much from that page, this week's activity. Who wants to come in and share their views? Nobody? Okay, Afikile, yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So what I've been wondering about, I realized that I spent a lot of time discussing about how we can include children with disabilities in mainstream schools, or in particular deaf learners. But then I'm also concerned about whether should our goal be placing them in mainstream schools, or should our goal be ensuring that deaf learners, including all learners with disabilities, ensure that they have full access to language, identity, and belonging, even if that is better achieved in a deaf school or in a special school. Because one part of me does want them to be included in a mainstream school, but the other part is just asking, how about like they get all the access that they need, access to language, identity, and belonging, but in a different setting than in mainstream school? I'm finding it hard to prioritize the two. So I just want to hear other people's views on that.
Very good question. And it shows you're deeply engaging with the issues, because you're not, you're deeply engaging with the issues. I'm not go further than that. Thanks for that. Masabata, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ike. I'm not providing a response to Afikile.
Okay.
Mine is also a different concern. I think with what we were talking about earlier in terms of awareness and stuff, things are now starting to come to the surface. I had an engagement with the lady who is running a center, a disability center. One of the things that she was mentioning was that they are worried about the implementation of inclusion, stating the fact that the Department of Education, following the court judgment for the Western Cape case, they are now coming to these centers to take the children. They will just call the center and say, we want 4 kids that we are sending to school. So the question would then be, are we implementing for the sake of implementing the court order, or do we even look at the needs for this, the kids that we are sending to school versus what we have in our schools in terms of readiness to absorb them? Because one of the questions that she was asking was that most of the kids who are at the centers, they require aftercare. And at the school setup, the school, they finish, I think, around 1 or 2, and the parents at that time, they are still at work. And there is no arrangement in terms of what should happen after school. And the second part is, as the school closes, because the schools, they have recess, and these centers, they don't. What happens to those kids? And this is one of the questions that they asked to the department, to say, what will happen when the school closes? Because for us, we are here all like for 5 days or 7 days a week. So the response was then to be like, no, we will send them back to the center. So I'm just wondering as to whether, are we implementing for the sake of implementing, or have we thought it through, or we are just wanting to have met the target with regard to saying, no, we have now children with disabilities who are part of the school. The other part that I wanted to say, I think with the Jabal matter, was that I was listening to the interviews for Carmen and Dombi and Jabal. And I think they share a common understanding with regard to how the deaf community has assisted them in terms of realizing their human rights, the confidence, and being able to socialize. And now, if with regard to the mainstream schooling system, they had challenges that they are raising, to say there were difficulties in terms of the teachers not being able to sign, and also they failed for a number of years because of not being understood by the teachers. So for me to say he should be going to the mainstream or the special school, I'm caught in the middle, because I think somehow it needs to address what he wants as the person and where he feels he is fitting best and he is benefiting. So yeah, it's a catch-22 situation for me on the Jabal matter. Thank you.
Thank you. That means we're doing something, we're doing the right thing with this course. When you become confused as to what the solution is, we're doing something right in the course. Because that is very important. Why? Because it's helping to highlight to you that there are, in many of these instances, there's no clear-cut solution. Yes, there are certain instances where you will know, okay, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. And that is very important because too many times, just like you're saying, you're asking the question, the department coming and saying that we just want to take the kids. Is it just for representation? Too many times, that's the approach we see, whereby people just want to go, oh, we've done this, it's sorted. We've done that, it's sorted. We've done this, it's sorted. So part of the reason for this course is these questions which Afikile asked. You can see the gray areas, question which you asked, gray areas. Part of what this course is trying to get you to do is what is a DSC approach to those questions. So it requires you guys as the scholars to go through your readings and look at the strategy and say, okay, what would be a disability studies in education response to those questions? So I'm not going to give answer. So Afikile's question is there. Mr. Bata's question is there. Who wants to respond to those questions, or you have another question? That's what I'm saying. Who wants to start discussing? Well, okay, how do you even think the view as to, that means what should be the nature of our response to those kinds of issues? What should be the nature of our response?
Okay, can I add something, Dr. Ika?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
I think with my engagement with the center manager, I was not providing answers for her, but I tried to ask questions when she was saying they are taking kids to school and she was having this complaint. So my question to her was saying, but if the department needs to implement, they need to know in terms of what kind of challenges they need to address. And if they don't have children with disabilities, they won't be able to understand. But then also that is an unfair situation because you don't bring the kids so that you address the barriers. You need first to address the barriers and then you can bring the kids to the school. So yeah, I think also I am creating a problem as well. But that's what I was asking her to say, but how will they know? And she was saying, no, but they can't do that, take children. I think with her, she was worried that they are going to shut down the center, of which I found that to be selfish in a way. But yeah, but I'm not really sure how the department is thinking this through. I haven't.
Please pick up the statement. It's in the way.
Lilam. Okay.
Where's it coming from?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm saying I haven't had a chance to hear the side of the department in terms of implementing this, because in some of the platforms where I sit, we do serve in those committees where the Department of Education will be presenting on this. But unfortunately, since I started, we haven't had any meetings. So I'm hoping, well, next time when we meet, I will then have some kind of understanding in terms of the implementation from the department side. And also with the knowledge that I have, I will start to understand the discussions of which I was in most instances left behind when they were discussing these issues. So I think now I will be in a better position.
Okay. So that better position, I'm not asking this question to really Master Bata, but what would that better position look like with the knowledge you have from the course so far? Because, okay, first of all, Afikile is talking about, if it's going to be special school or if it's going to be mainstream school, okay? Talking about access, okay? So think about it this way. You have access. Access needs to lead to full participation, and full participation needs to lead to achievement. So that means we need to see those three things featuring. A lot of times people stop at access, but we know access is not enough. We know there needs to be full participation of the learner. After full participation, are they achieving the goal of education? Okay, that's what the Masabara is talking about. Okay, is it just symbolic inclusion? Oh, we have learners who are deaf now at the school, but are they achieving the same objective that non-disabled learners are achieving? So when you think about that, what is DSC's approach to moving from that access, full participation, achievement? You've not learned everything, but you've learned some strategies. You've learned things at policy level. You've learned things at policy level. You've learned things at unconscious level. Okay, you learn those things. That's views of people around disability, inclusion. You've learned things, we've discussed things around training. We've discussed things around resources. We've discussed things around monitoring. So I don't want to start going to the answers because then I'm giving you the answers, but these are the different. So you need to now start having a coordinated view of how these things can be brought together to address these kinds of challenges. Because what we're starting to see is that we cannot just focus on one aspect. We need to have a DSC solution based. So what is that DSC solution based? So from like this week, and if you see even the online activity for this week is asking you particularly about UDL. You learned about UDL also, where does UDL fit in, and how can it be for learners who are deaf and things like that. Yeah. So because Basabata has raised a whole number of things. How will you get to know the needs of the learners? You learned about SEAS. Okay, how will what is the school's approach to disability inclusion? Okay, what do they have? Resources they have. Okay, what they lack. Okay, let's talk about aftercare. What is that implication? We talked about the involvement of family. We talked about the impact of family. How does that play in? Family support and the rest of it. And she's kind of looking at the fracture of the education. Is like, that's the question she's asking. Let's just have our tick box. Oh no, we already have learners with learners who are deaf in the school. And then later you take them off again. Is that the solution? Training, resources. Yeah. So I've talked about the cornerstones of what you need to think about. Anybody wants to comment more about that? Or you're allowed to bring in more questions, because that's what this session is about. So for instance, for those two questions, what are the areas that we need to look into in terms of addressing the challenges? Is this a single layer, multiple layers? What are the layers?
I think to me, Dr. Ike, is about getting to the to the mid, the blended thing, the special schools and the mainstream to get it more into the center of inclusive schools. But when I look at this question, the instruction, it says here, could be applied to mixed schools. We try to focus on schools, but the more we go into depth, it's more focus. It's more to do. The focus becomes more on learners, the learners' needs. So it's a bit difficult, like you said. The disabilities it varies, and the needs obviously varies because no one is the same. Even when it comes to blind, hearing, hard of hearing, the needs will always be different. So how do we balance it at the end of the day? With universal design for learning by with the like I said, like implementing or using the 3 principles. I think I'm more on the same level as Afkile and Masabata. It's difficult when you have to accommodate for the different needs.
I agree with you, and that is what DSA helps you solve.
Mm.
So I'll put that hint again. That's what the DSC approach helps you solve. So you need to start looking into what is a DSC approach. Doreen, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll start by looking at the Salamanca statement, the framework that says everyone is unique and everybody needs to be recognized and every need needs to be addressed by the system we use. But I'm looking again at the level of support. We need to look at the level of support according to that hierarchy whereby we have to look at the core classroom instruction, meaning that when we support students, we have to start at the bottom. And then that's where the core class room instruction is needed with the universal measures and the universal support. And then we go again to the middle and we say that we have to look at selective measures as Prof. Is Prof. who?
Or Mackenzie.
Mackenzie's,
Mm.
Mackenzie was saying that the levels of support is important, especially in the classroom. And then we also go up to the hierarchy, looking at the additional measure of the intensive support, meaning that that's whereby we can look at the student who need extra class, who need special care. So as that's how inclusivity works, that you need to look at the level of support in the class and then how it goes with the hierarchy. Then you are able to reach those students who need extra support, not saying you are separating them, but you are giving them the relevant support within the classroom. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Doreen. So Doreen is saying it's not a one size fits all. Doreen, if I'm right, it's not a one size fits all. That's one. And two is that the level of support is both a systemic one and an individualized one. So that's it. No one, just a systemic and also an individualized. Sometimes the systemic one is the one which we lack a lot. And so that's why a lot of focus is on it. But Doreen, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But what she's saying is that it's not only systemic. There are instances where we need that to zoom into those specialized cases, support, and address those. Okay, so good. But you talked about awareness. Awareness, getting to know, from the policy level, the Salamanca statement. So that's what I was hoping that you guys will actually bring in. You have to look at the policy. That's why we started with it in DSC. First started because if people don't understand the policy, implementation is at risk. The right implementation is at risk. It does not say that when people understand policy, it immediately translates to full implementation. But it's very important to understand what policy is saying. White paper 6, Salamanca statement, UNCRPD. We started with that where Professor Watermeyer, if you remember, was listing those policies. And then we now started going into not only understanding of those policies, but how do we monitor their implementation? If you remember, talked about it in those levels, whereby it's okay. What monitoring? If you remember that video we watched in week 1 from the Eastern Cape, which made all of us sad. We spoke about monitoring mechanisms, because if you just implement, and there's no way to check what we're doing, is it working? We'll also come back to the same issues or new issues. Okay, so I'm just broadening what Doreen said. Policy, the support, and not a one size fits all. Yeah, and I'm getting the sense that education is as if almost education is adverse to when we say not a one size fits all. Like education, we always want, this is the way it works for everybody. Okay, so that's what I want to say to that. In the chat, Masabata says ability to apply DSC knowledge to the real life situation. Yes, that's like I want to keep people thinking about, because that's if you don't get that at the end of this course, then you've not gotten the core of this course. Okay, and then Fikile says Ilham is rushing to her flight with 7 p.m. She will watch. Okay, all right. Then Mandisa had to leave the meeting. Okay, thank you. My brother says, I think the challenge is seeing myself as an outsider in this equation. I need to internalize the issues and link DSC to the real life situations. Very good, Masabata. You are bringing in what your classmates learned from semester one. From semester one, we were saying that don't just look at society. How are you responding to disability? That's what you're picking up. Okay? At least traveling home or having network issues, okay? Doreen, is that an old hand or a new hand? Say a legacy hand or a new hand?
Sorry, it's an old one.
Oh, it's an old one. Okay. Any other person want to weigh in? Donati, please, if you want to weigh in, please feel free to jump in.
No, I've missed this call. I've missed this one.
Okay.
I got back in the middle of it, so I've missed the initial discussion.
Okay. No problem. So when we Fikile did not talk about it that much, but she's implied it. But Masabata, hinted at it. First of all, what will be the approach to the different needs of the learners? How can we approach that? You've already learned things around that from the course. We want to now talk about the different needs of our learners who are deaf. How can we? What will be the way, the inclusive way to start approaching that? I already spoke about that. It's like you're trying to fix the system when you've not even looked at the needs of the learners. Yes, Masabata, go ahead.
Mine, Dr. Ike, on the deaf child, I think learning how to sign for me will provide a better way of connecting with someone who is using sign language. I don't know. I think when we started, I spoke about my niece who we are not understanding him in a way because we all cannot sign, and he had a little bit of exposure by staying at a center where they taught them sign language. And every time when he does something, we would misinterpret what he's saying. And I was listening to the videos on Tuesday on sign language, and I saw one sign that he normally does, and the sign means anxious. And every time when he does that, we interpret it to be something different. So those are the things when I'm saying sign language for me would be a better way to start, where we are able to understand each other. I think it's Ntombi who said in her family they cannot sign, they cannot use sign language, and she would just agree to anything because it's like because they don't understand her, and she feels like yeah. And I also have a friend who is also using sign language. So because she is able to lip read, that's how I would understand her better. But when I'm with her, she will try to teach me some basics in terms of understanding the language. But because we don't stay in contact for a long time, it will be once in a while. And I think for now, it's been 2 or 3 years, I've never seen her. So you tend to forget because you are not putting that into practice. So that is for me the important part, because if you understand that, remember, I think it's there's one video, I can't remember the name, the guy who was presenting to the audience saying he was somewhere international, and he was the one who connected the two people who could not understand each other, but they are hearing people, but because of the language barrier, he was the one who was able to put some perspective into what they were discussing, and then saying, who is disabled now? Because I'm here, I can interpret for you. You are people who are hearing, but you cannot hear each other. So I think that is the basic and most important thing for me.
Thanks, Masibata. Is that in Jabbar says that if you're a hearing person and you go into the deaf community, you are actually the one who becomes disabled. And because you now feel, if you remember that first video we watched in semester 1, Masibata, you also watched it. Remember that video where we flipped the situation on its head, where able-bodied people got into the society of people on wheelchairs?
Yes,
Do you remember that video? Yeah, all of you should remember that video. With semester 1 people, you used it. We used it for orientation, where they came in and doors were built, 4 feet high, 3 to 4 feet high, because it accommodated people on wheelchairs. Okay, so able-bodied people, when they come, they bang their head, and they started getting, if you remember, they started getting lumps on their head. Then wheelchair people came together, they formed committees. They started putting money together to buy helmets because there was now the able-bodied people problem. They formed charities and they did this, that, and the rest of it to accommodate, able-bodied people. So it just gives you a picture of, how it is, the experience of disability, in society. But what you're saying, Masibata, is that how do we, that sign language, how do we operationalize the policy? Because we've had something positive that has happened in the country, which is sign language is now an official language. But how have we operationalized it at schools, at university, and the rest of it? That's what you're talking about. How do we make sure that lecturers know how to do sign language? How do we make sure that in the curriculum, when we say learners, okay, you're allowed to choose one other language, is sign language part of it? And what the resources put behind that, so that if I'm choosing English, I can choose sign language as my second language, or if choosing Afrikaans and sign language, those kind of things. How are we making sure that happens? And you mentioned something very, very important. It's something I don't know whether he spoke about it in semester 1 and semester 2, but it's something you often find as a way in which persons with disabilities cope. When they find that able-bodied people are not able to understand them in certain things, they just, okay, you know what, it's fine, I'm okay with it. So you were talking about Ntombi's needs when she was finding that they couldn't understand that through sign language. She just, okay, you know what, I'll just accept, that you people understand. That's a very, very important area. And finally, the support that is made available. Yeah. So those are some of the things from what you're sharing, Masibata. Those are some of the things to consider as ways in which we need to find solutions for. But when we talk about those needs, what role do you think SIAS will play? And will that role be effective? Because we're talking about the different needs now. How can SIAS come in, or in what ways can SIAS come in, which we've learned so far?
Can I come in?
Yes, but go ahead.
Okay. I think Dr. Ike, when I think of SIAS in this situation, like for instance, when you're talking about the sign language itself, for me, it feels like it will only be focusing on a specific group. which is learners and their parents, not including the entire community or the society at large. So I think the policy should be comprehensive enough to include everyone. So then CS alone won't be enough in this instance, because I believe this should be a thing that covers everyone. If it says South Africans, this is a requirement. It should be for everyone, not necessarily those who have children or who have the challenge. I would call it a challenge for now, yeah, because they cannot talk to each other or speak with each other. So I think maybe CS alone might not be sufficiently able to address this. Maybe we need something else which can be broader, where we can say this needs to be implemented in church, in every area, because earlier we commented about even the media not utilizing sign language or subtitles when they air the programs on TV. So it's not something that is supposed to be created for a small group, but South Africa as a whole.
No, definitely. I agree with you with a national approach. Definitely, that's very, very needed. But you have to remember that the first thing we are looking at is the school environment, the learning environment for the school. So how is it that we make sure that learners who are deaf or learners with disabilities are fully included? And if you remember, always make sure you don't, with solutions, you don't make solutions or you don't think around things that are too broad or too big for you to handle. Take things phase by phase. So like the question, the questions you posed about your issue, about government coming, taking the kids, and that's a school, let's say school government, issue that is happening. So you then need to look at, okay, what are the strategies in school that we can implement that will help with the addressing the learner's needs, making sure, so all those things that I spoke about, addressing the learner needs. When you're addressing the learner needs, what are the solutions in terms of family support, solutions in terms of awareness of the teachers, solution in terms in the policy level, solution in terms of the training of the teachers, solution in terms of resources. So you see, looking at those things at those different layers in the school environment, because then you're now reaching into a more DSC holistic approach. Okay. Now, after you finish looking at that, you now say, okay, in the broader society, how do we make sure in terms of media? How do we make sure in terms of the community where they live in? We look at, but you have to first look at the school environment. Look at the school environment and see how we can address that. And then you now start moving further. So that's why I asked about CS, because how will CS help us in that situation in the school environment? Because when you start using CS will help identify challenges of support. Family is usually the first primary support for the learners who are there. So how do we do that? How do we, in the classroom, because CS will now start looking at, I'm talking about the solutions now. CS will start looking at curriculum. And when you're looking at the curriculum, what else helps us with the curriculum? You start looking at your universal design for learning. Okay. You start looking at how is the classroom formulated. So that's arrangement and everything. And when you look at that, you start looking at, okay, when the teacher training, where is the learner placed in class? We really talk about when he was learning, he was often placed in front of the class. Why? Okay. The position of the learner is very important. Learners who learn how to lip read, what do we need to do about that? You start looking at all those areas. So I'm trying to hint at the different layers which you need to look at depending on the need, and then bring it together in a DSA approach. Okay. Okay. Any other person wants to come in? Masibata said, I took my position as a development party. Yes, and it's very important, Masibata. It's very important to look at that approach also. It's very important to look at that approach. But you you will kind of tailor it and bring it out in terms of the needs of the learner. And then if you're now looking at how do you support that as a development practitioner, you bring that layer also in. Yeah. Because some people have not spoken at all today. That was what Onati was hinting at. So let's see. Let's see if I start calling names. Let's see. We don't have a full class actually. A full class. Can we hear? Okay, I know she's been off and on. Can we at least get some feedback from either, Mandisa? Mbale has spoken already. Mandisa, any thoughts? And Alice. Well, Alice has typed in the chat, and she says she's traveling. Traveling home, so having network issues. Okay. Mandisa, anything you want to contribute? If you can't speak, you can also type in the chat. Let me see. We're already at 5:30. We have 20 minutes to go, 21 minutes to go. So let's see.
I'm just going to give a bit of context with regards to our unit. I was listening to you now speaking about the needs of the students. So yeah, so for instance, now this time of the year when the applications are done, we try to target all the students who's before they are registered. So we look at the students who indicated that they have disabilities. So we would go and look at that reports and then look at the different types of disabilities that we have to deal with. We will reach out to the students. So when the students come in, they will we will have specifically for the students with chronic illnesses who needs like critical attention and so forth. We will have roundtables, and the specialists will sit around the table, not around the table. Nowadays online, but they will have this meeting where they discuss the need of the students. So I'm just thinking in terms of students who are deaf. So we will discuss it. We will obviously plan for the next year. Do we have enough funding to cover sign language interpreter? So when the term starts, that the student is accommodated. So we will have a person in the unit. Denise, she will communicate with the faculties, with the lecturers. She will inform them of the needs of the student. To, like you mentioned now, the placing of the student in the class. Will the student require notes? Things like that will help the student get through the, if I can use those words, get through the year, and to accommodate them so that they become part of the class and not feel isolated. So yeah, that is just one way of looking at things. And yeah, I think that the point that I want to bring out there is sitting and discussing the needs of the student. So with when it comes to a deaf student, will the school have okay, firstly we focus on the learner. Is the learner familiar with sign language? If not, that's a barrier in the first place. So we need to look at the sign language interpreter or other means. How are we going to accommodate the students when you speak to UDL? What is the first one? The engagement. How are we going to engage the student so that the student understand the curricula, what is being taught by the teacher? And then the second one, how are we going to do the representation for the learner to benefit from the experience in the class? And then obviously the last point is the expression. How during the course of the year, how will the learner be able to express what that learner has learned visually? And taking it from a perspective that the learner is deaf, how will he benefit from the classroom activities? How are we going to make the space teachable, and so that the learner at the end of the day can learn just as the other learners are learning. I hope that
Thanks,
that makes
Cedric.
sense. Thank you.
No, it does actually makes good sense. And where you started off from saying that if the learner does not know sign language, that already is a barrier. So when you're thinking around that, also think about especially in that particular case that you mentioned, think about the importance of the deaf community. Jabbar kept talking about it, and we were hinting at it when we were talking about the limitation of language development, of literacy development and everything for someone. Because once you find that a learner does not even have that, it's not just only learning sign language, it's the culture. Is Kelobele was talking about it, how they express the words, how they see it, but it's different from how the words are pronounced, because intonation gives a different meaning to the word, and that's something the deaf community facilitates. So that's why when you're talking about your solution, how do you include the culture, the deaf culture, so that the student is able to pick up all those incidental information which we learn when we are growing up, from engaging with our classmates, engaging with our brothers and sisters at home, engaging when we go to the stores. All those things are missing for the learner. So I just want to mention that. So very, very good. Thanks for that contribution. Doreen?
Thank you. I think Cedric has covered a lot, and on this, yes, I just wanted to mention that it's important to screen as a first step. Remember the learner's profile. We need to know the medical history of the learner. We need to know the personal details of the learner, so that as a school, we need to know, are we having the resources to support the learner? Because after screening, each and every like, let's say for instance, support is there, or maybe sign languages interpreters are there, then we need also to look at our teachers. Are they trained to support those learners? Because what is important when we screen, we must also look at our resources as a school, that do we have the support for this student? Do we have the support for these learners? Because remember, even teachers, they need to have the profile of the learners, because normally you might find that most teachers, the schools, they don't share their profile to the teachers. They always say it's confidential. But it is important for the teachers to see those profiles and say to everyone, to know within the staff that this person is at a certain level. Remember, yesterday's video was saying that some are having hearing at one ear, the other ear is not, and even Dr. Nati today mentioned the identity, that some they get their deaf disability along the way, so they differ, this deaf community. So we need to have that profile first. As Sia say, let's screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doreen. So the importance of screening, but as we know, for screening not to evolve into just a pathology, whereby it becomes just a medical model. But you're very, very right, because that screening will help identify the needs, the challenges. And then you're taking a DSC approach now. You talk about the support, adequate support, you talk about the resources, and you're talking about the training. All those things are part of a DSC approach. Thank you. Masabata, then Afikile, then I will read what Ali said in the chat. So Masabata, Afikile, then.
Thank you, Doctor. I think mine is just a question or a concern. Listening to Jabal, one of the things that he mentioned was having or advocating for an institution for deaf. Now, I want to come to what Cedric was saying in terms of the segregation, whether isn't this going to create that even more? But this is just a question that I needed to raise to the platform.
So definitely there is a possibility of that happening. There's a possibility of that happening. In fact, you will get to know at some point this exists, and so you don't look at disability accommodations as perfect, you know. And I always tell people usually, some people usually think that no, even a critique of how even persons with disabilities does that shouldn't happen. No, it should happen, because that is what it means being human. Being human means that we get some things right and we don't get all things right. That's what it means being human. So that's what Prof. Watermeyer used to warn. And that's what, if you remember that lady that said, one of those videos that said, I'm not your inspiration, or something like that. Spoke about I'm not your inspiration. So is this idealization of disability? Because once you start to idealize, so it's where people say, oh, Oscar Pistorius made it in life. Why can't you make it? Understand? That is where that idealization leads to. Because you start forgetting the same way human life sits on a spectrum. It's not everybody that is Barack Obama. It's not everybody that is Mandela. It's not everybody that is, all these figures. We have people that live in between those spectrum. Life sits on a spectrum. Disability also speaks in a spectrum. So when people start to idealize disability, they now start discriminating against people who they say, no, but this person made it in life. Why is it that you didn't make it in life? Because everybody's needs and everybody's challenges are not the same. So very, very important, as a matter of what you're raising, is that we start looking at it and stop, don't idealize disability, because life is different. For the thing we're saying is that nobody should be discriminated based on disability. Yeah. The other things I wanted to say, but I've forgotten. Yeah. So let's go on to Afikile. Go ahead.
So my question or concern is based on what Doreen shared. Actually, to Doreen, is directed to Doreen. So Doreen, I've heard that you say the first important thing to do is to screen so that you can identify the support needs of the learner. Now, let's say that the learner has been screened and then you have identified what kind of support they require in order to participate meaningfully. So now that you have the information that you have now, what would you recommend, or how would you respond in a DSE perspective to that situation? Would you then, if let's say now you have identified the support needs of the learner, but now you realize that the institution does not have the resources or the means to support this learner the way that they require to be supported, how would you respond in such situation? Would you reject the child, or would you, yeah, I'm just curious and challenging you.
Thank you so much, Afikile. But I think, for instance, there are schools which are not resourced. After identifying or after screening, that's whereby the school has to know that, do we have that support that is needed for the students. But when we look at many schools, they don't have the resources. And how do we engage in the DSE? It means we need to go to those frameworks from whereby the government has also signed with the United Nations Convention of Disability and stuff. They need to be held accountable. Schools need to be held accountable. I think that's how we should look at the judicial way of saying that all schools, they need to accommodate all students. So everyone, as the Sia says, the Salmanka says, everybody has their unique needs and they need to be recognized at the end of the day. So we need to hold somebody accountable, as the DSE says, that you as a government, you have signed the white paper saying this, and saying this, and then where's the implementation? Then it's not happening. Then we have to hold them accountable as the human rights and take them to court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said. Thank you so much, Doreen.
And good articulated that you didn't edge towards, because I always say this, people will build upon our ideas. So we don't go and, attack this person or that person. So I like how this just transformed, how it's played out. That you guys, brought the ideas together and built upon it and were able to get at an answer that takes us forward. Thanks, both of you, for that. Okay, let me read what's in the chat. Alice says, what's the time? Oh, 7 minutes. Alice says, I'm not sure if this has been mentioned, but I think when we talk about inclusion for deaf learners, I think it's important to recognize that it cannot be achieved through a single intervention. It requires us to think in phases and layers, beginning with the immediate school environment, and then gradually widening the circle to include families, communities, policy, framework. So you people are getting the DAC idea. You're getting the DAC idea. When you're doing your online activities, then start going into details of what that DAC idea, but you're getting the broad, holistic idea. Yashina said, just to add, if screening shows support needs that the institution cannot fully meet the responsibility, is to adapt existing resources, involve families and communities, and advocate for systemic change. Now, that's very important. What she's saying there is that, so, because there's the danger of schools saying, we don't have the resources, there's nothing we can do. And that's what Doreen is hinting at. There needs to be an understanding that lack of resources is not a reason to exclude the child, because that's what people usually fall to. Schools fall to that. So, no, we don't have resources, so there's nothing we can do. That's why we now go to the law. Okay, what does the law say? How do we hold people accountable? Not only the school, how do we hold the government accountable? Okay. Remember, inclusion means finding creative ways to align support at different schools. Creative ways. Remember, we talked about, one of the questions in, I think it was the first online activity. I can't remember where now, but where the question was, if you include, I think it's first online, where if you include, what are the benefits of including the learner for the school? If you remember, in the first week, there was that question. What is the benefits to the school of including a learner with a disability? And one of those benefits was the teachers will be able to learn creative ways of teaching, creative ways of including learners with disability in the classroom. So they'll be able to learn different strategies. So for instance, a learner who is deaf, they'll start learning sign language. That's one of the ways. Okay, you start learning when you're teaching in class, face the learners. So that if you have learners who lip read, they're able to understand. But facing the learners in class, does it only benefit learners who lip read? How do learners who are not disabled feel if they have a teacher always backing them? So if I'm teaching now, as me and Unati are teaching, how would you feel if I'm backing you and I'm talking to you like this? How would you feel as a student in class? You actually tell me, sir, sorry, can you face us when you are speaking to us? That's just a practical example. You guys will actually stop me and say, please, Ike, what's happening? Why are you backing us when you're talking to us? So see, it not only benefits the learner who is hearing impaired, it benefits everybody. Because even I, who can speak and everything, there's certain times where the way the speaker, their lip reading and everything, you benefit from it. Okay. So you start learning, the part of the benefit is that the teachers start learning creative ways to include, if they have videos, to make sure there are captions. And I told you in the beginning of the lecture that I also benefit from captions as well as I'm going through videos and the rest of it. Okay. As you said, remember, inclusion means finding creative. support at different levels of school, family, curriculum, and policy, so that the learner can still participate meaningfully, even if resources are limited. So that's a very key distinction. We never say go to a school which tells you we don't have the resources. Say no. That's not reason to say you can't include the learner, because the right to education does not say, oh, if you don't have resources, then the right to education does not apply. It doesn't say that anywhere. This child has a right to education. So what other ways can we institute to include the learner while we work on the resources, while we work on getting the resources which we need? And one of them is holding the government, accountable. So very good, very good. We just have 2 minutes left. Any other burning last question, or is there anything you want to hint at before we close off?
No. I think I've enjoyed listening to this more than saying anything. I think that the content is well captured by the class in terms of this round or this theme for this week. And I think if there are any further questions, they are free to send them to us. And I think we'll also see the reflection on the Olafo, where I think they will be reflecting further on what they have learned this week.
All right, everybody. Thank you. This has been really good. It has been really good. Bring it in your discussions, okay, as you're going along. But I see a formulation of that, paying attention to that holistic view and looking at what are the different aspects that is come. Yeah. All right, everybody. If no further last question, we'll have 1 minute. Have a good evening, and we'll catch you next week and also online.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for the interaction. It's been very interactive. I've enjoyed this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Everybody have a good
Thank you,
evening.
bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.